The war nobody asked for. The universe was on fire. News screens across the galaxy flashed red warnings. Every channel, every broadcast, every message repeated the same words. The Tyrant Empire has declared war. On hundreds of planets, leaders panicked. Civilizations prepared for battle. Soldiers armed themselves. Scientists built defense shields. Spies sent urgent reports. People whispered in fear. And in a small, messy apartment floating above Earth, Lena Carter took a sip of her coffee and sighed. She sat on her couch, legs stretched out, watching the news on a dusty screen. Again? Didn't they try this last time? She mumbled. The news anchor, a blue-skinned alien with large eyes, spoke in a nervous voice. The Tyrant Empire has officially declared war against the Galactic Council. Their fleet is moving fast. All major planets are on high alert. If we do not surrender, they will attack within days. Lena took another sip of coffee. She yawned. Her small robot assistant, Toby, floated beside her. The little metal sphere beeped in panic. Lena, this is serious. The entire universe is at risk. Lena didn't even look at him. Mum. Okay. Good luck to them. Toby's light blinked wildly. Good luck to them. Lena, Earth is part of the Galactic Council. If the Tyrants win, you lose too. She shrugged. Yeah. But they won't win. They never do. Galactic Council will figure something out. Toby made a loud beeping sound. You are impossible. How can you be so calm? Lena didn't answer. She had heard this before. Every few years, some great war was about to start. Every time, people panicked. And every time, the war didn't really happen. It was all politics, threats, and big speeches. She reached for a cookie on the table, but before she could take a bite, her apartment shook violently. The lights flickered. The air filled with a deep humming sound. Toby spun in circles. Lena, something is happening. There is a ship outside. Lena finally looked up. A ship. Who cares? Toby beeped rapidly. You will care in 3 seconds. Boom. The doors of her apartment slammed open. A bright golden light filled the room. A group of armored soldiers stepped inside. Their silver suits shone under the lights. Their weapons hummed with energy. Lena blinked. Wrong house. A tall man stepped forward. His face was half covered by a metal mask. His eyes burned like blue fire. He spoke in a deep, commanding voice. Lena Carter, you are coming with us. Lena sighed. No, I'm not. The soldiers didn't move. The man's face remained emotionless. You are the only one who can save this war. Lena took another sip of coffee. Not my problem. Toby made a weird static sound, like he wanted to scream but couldn't. Lena, please. They have guns. Lena put her coffee down and rubbed her temples. Okay, let me guess. The Tyrants are too powerful. The Council is losing. You need my help. Blah, blah, blah. Did I miss anything? The masked man didn't blink. You have something inside you. A power. A secret. You were chosen for this moment. Lena laughed. A full, amused, genuine laugh. Oh, that's new, she said, wiping her eyes. Last time, someone told me I was the lost princess of a forgotten empire. Before that, someone said I was the last heir of an ancient warrior clan. Now you guys think I have some secret power. Please, try harder. The man took a step closer. We do not have time for jokes. The Tyrants are coming. If you refuse, we all die. Lena tilted her head. And if I go with you? The man's blue eyes glowed brighter. Then you will change the future. Lena stared at him. The room was silent. Even Toby had stopped beeping. Then Lena sighed again, a long, deep, bored sigh. She grabbed a blanket and pulled it over her head. No thanks. Close the door on your way out. The soldiers stood frozen, as if they couldn't believe what they just heard. The masked man's face twitched. His hand moved toward his gun. Toby beeped urgently. "Lena, what are you doing?" Lena's muffled voice came from under the blanket. "Sleeping. Wake me up when the war is over." The masked man clenched his fists. "You do not understand, Lena Carter. If you refuse." Before he could finish, the air shimmered. A loud, deep humming sound filled the room. The soldiers' communication devices crackled with static. A voice, dark and terrifying, echoed through the speakers. "The war has begun." Lena peeked out from under her blanket. Outside her window, space lit up with fire. Giant warships, larger than entire cities, moved across the sky. Explosions flashed in the distance. A fleet of Tyrant battleships entered Earth's orbit. Toby whispered, "Oh no." The masked man stared at Lena. "Do you believe us now?" Lena groaned. "Fine, but I'm bringing my coffee." She stood up, grabbed her cup, and took one last sip. Then, as the universe screamed in chaos, she lazily followed the soldiers into the unknown. The war had begun, and Lena Carter couldn't care less. The woman who doesn't care. The universe was burning. Warships filled the sky. Planets trembled. The Tyrant Empire had finally made its move. And Lena Carter? She was lying on a soft chair, sipping coffee, half asleep in the middle of a war meeting. The Galactic Council War Room was a massive, circular chamber deep inside Orion Prime, the heart of interstellar politics. The walls flickered with holograms of incoming attacks, burning colonies, and emergency distress signals. Aliens of all shapes and sizes argued over the fate of their worlds. The air smelled of ozone, fear, and bad decisions. Lena sat at the main conference table, one leg crossed over the other, lazily stirring her coffee with a metal spoon. The room was filled with high-ranking officials, war generals, and planetary leaders. Every eye was on her. A blue-skinned alien general slammed his forehands on the table. "Do you even understand the situation?" Lena took a slow sip. "Mom, very bad. Tyrants are coming. Boom, boom, war, destruction." "Got it," a red-scaled reptilian senator hissed, his sharp teeth glinting. "Then why do you sit there like a lazy flesh sack? Do you not care for your own planet?" Lena blinked. Flesh sack. Rude. She leaned back in her chair and sighed. "Listen. Every time, it's the same story. Some big bad empire threatens the galaxy. The council panics. Everyone scrambles to fight back. But in the end, it all works out. Somehow. So why should I stress?" The council members nearly exploded. Voices shouted at once. "This is different. The Tyrants have never been this strong. They have a planet-destroying weapon. Our fleets are already losing." Lena yawned. "Wow, so original." The masked man from before, Commander Voss, stood silently at the edge of the room, watching her carefully. When the shouting finally calmed, he stepped forward. His blue eyes glowed behind his mask. "Lena Carter, you were brought here for a reason." She gave him a lazy thumbs up. "And I'm still waiting for that reason to be interesting." The entire room bristled. One of the council elders, a frail-looking being with glowing silver skin, finally spoke in a calm, grave voice. "You do not know who you are, child." Lena rolled her eyes. "Oh no, not this again." The elder ignored her. "Inside you, there is something old, something forgotten. A power beyond any species' understanding. A force that could turn this war in our favor." Lena took another sip of coffee. "And let me guess, only I can awaken it." The elder nodded solemnly. "Yes." Lena smirked. "Wow, what a crazy coincidence. Just like those ancient prophecies. How convenient." Commander Voss stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Lena, this is not a joke." She finally put down her coffee. Her eyes met his, a spark of amusement in them. "You dragged me across the galaxy, gave me a big speech about war, and now you're telling me I'm secretly special. I mean, come on. You don't hear how ridiculous this sounds." Voss didn't blink. "You are the only human born with an unknown genetic marker. The only being in the universe that has it. It is no accident." Lena stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Okay, prove it." The room fell silent. The elder and Voss exchanged glances. Then the elder lifted a trembling hand and gestured toward the center of the room. A golden orb of energy appeared. It pulsed softly, floating in midair. Symbols and ancient writings swirled around it. "Touch it," the elder whispered. Lena raised an eyebrow. "And if I don't?" Voss's voice was grave. "Then we all die." Lena stared at them, then at the orb, then back at them. She sighed. "Fine." She stood up, stretched lazily, and walked toward the glowing sphere. The moment her fingertips brushed against it, the entire war room shook violently. Holograms glitched. Lights flickered. A deep, vibrating hum filled the air. Lena gasped as a flood of images poured into her mind. A forgotten history, an ancient war, a hidden secret buried beneath time itself. A voice, echoing from the void. "She has awakened." Lena stumbled back, clutching her head. What the hell was that? The elder's voice trembled. "The power, it was real. You felt it, didn't you?" Lena's hands shook. She clenched them into fists. Her breathing was heavy. For the first time, she looked truly unsettled. Voss stepped forward. "Now do you believe us?" Lena took a deep breath. Then she slowly picked up her coffee cup and took another sip. "Nope. Still doesn't explain anything." The entire room screamed in frustration. The elder buried his face in his hands. The reptilian senator slammed his head against the table. The blue-skinned general started hyperventilating. Voss sighed. "Lena, you cannot keep ignoring this." She tilted her head. "Sure, I can." Voss's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Lena froze. She looked down. Her hands were shaking. For the first time in a long time, Lena Carter wasn't sure if she could just ignore the universe anymore. And that terrified her. The secret of Lena Carter. The war room was silent. Lena Carter stood in the middle, her hands still trembling. The golden orb of energy floated beside her, its glow pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The council members, generals and warlords who had screamed at her just moments ago were now watching her in complete silence. They had all seen it. Lena wasn't just some lazy Earth girl who didn't care about the war. She was something else. Something dangerous. Something unknown. But Lena, she was still trying to act like it didn't matter. She took a deep breath and shoved her hands into her jacket pockets, trying to stop them from shaking. "All right. So, glowing orb, weird voices, my brain gets hijacked. Cool special effects, guys. But that doesn't mean anything." Commander Voss, the masked soldier who had dragged her into this mess, stepped forward. "You still refuse to accept the truth." Lena rolled her eyes. "Oh no, I accept the truth. The truth is, I should be at home, binge-watching space dramas, and ignoring this whole war nonsense. Instead, I'm stuck here while a bunch of aliens stare at me like I'm their last hope." The reptilian senator hissed in frustration. "You are our last hope." Lena shrugged. "Wow, that's just sad." Voss clenched his fists. He was done playing games. With a flick of his wrist, he pulled out a small metallic device and pressed a button. The air crackled with energy. And suddenly, Lena couldn't move. A sharp wave of force locked her body in place. It felt like invisible hands had grabbed her arms and legs, holding her still. "What the hell?" she shouted. Voss's voice was cold. "If you won't listen, we'll make you listen." Before Lena could curse him out, the golden orb exploded with light. Everything around her vanished. The vision. Lena blinked. She was no longer in the war room. She stood in an endless black void, stretching in all directions. Stars flickered in the distance. Strange whispers curled through the air, just out of reach. Then, suddenly, the void moved. Planets appeared, giant machines. Fleets of warships locked in battles so massive they made Earth's wars look like playground fights. And then she saw herself. Not the Lena Carter who liked to sleep in and ignore her responsibilities. No, this version of her was floating above a battlefield, arms spread wide, energy crackling around her like a living storm. Thousands of soldiers knelt before her, not out of respect, out of fear. A voice rumbled through the void, deep and ancient. You are the key, the last fragment of the old world, the only one who can end the cycle. Lena staggered backward, heart pounding. What is this? The scene changed again. She saw cities burning, entire worlds turning to dust. She saw the tyrant empire, their fleets consuming everything in their path. She saw the Galactic Council, weak and crumbling. And then, she saw herself again, standing before a throne made of shattered planets. The voice whispered, "You will choose war or peace, destruction or salvation." Lena clenched her fists. No, that's not me. That's not who I am. The vision blurred. The voice laughed. Not yet. Back in the war room, Lena gasped as reality slammed back into her. The war room snapped into focus. The council members were staring. The golden orb had vanished, and Lena was on the ground, breathing hard. Commander Voss loomed over her. His blue eyes glowed. Now do you understand? Lena wiped sweat from her forehead. Understand what? That I just had a cosmic horror flashback. Yeah. Great. Thanks for that. The elder's voice was grave. You saw the truth. You saw what you are meant to become. Lena's stomach twisted. The image of herself, the version that ruled over armies, the version that everyone feared, was still burned into her mind. She didn't want that. She didn't want any of this. She forced herself to stand up. Listen, I don't care what I saw. I don't care what power you think I have. I am not your hero. Voss's expression was unreadable behind his mask. You don't have a choice. Lena's eyes narrowed. Oh, watch me. Before anyone could react, she spun on her heel and walked toward the exit. The guards at the door stepped in front of her. She glared at them. Move. They didn't. She crossed her arms. Okay, fine. You want to keep me here. Go ahead, but you should know one thing. Voss tilted his head. And what is that? Lena smirked. I break things. Then she raised her hand. The room shook. The walls cracked. Every electronic device fizzled out at once, plunging the entire war room into complete darkness. A second later, emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie red shadows over the stunned faces of the council. Lena flexed her fingers. She hadn't even meant to do that. Voss was the first to speak. His voice was dangerously calm. You don't even know how to control it yet, do you? Lena swallowed hard. Nope. And that should scare you. For the first time, the council looked afraid of her. Lena didn't care. She had one goal now. Get out. Forget the war. Forget the council. Forget this whole mess. But deep down, she knew. The universe wasn't going to let her go so easily. The unstoppable woman. The escape plan was simple. Step 1. Get out of the war room. Step 2. Find a ship. Step 3. Fly far, far away from this stupid war. Of course, the Galactic Council had other ideas. Lena Carter ran down the long metallic hallway of Orion Prime, the capital station of the universe. The emergency lights flashed red, alarms blaring from all directions. Behind her, security guards shouted, their heavy boots pounding against the steel floor. Stop here. Lena didn't stop. She didn't even look back. She wasn't a trained soldier. She wasn't an assassin or a hero. She was just a woman who didn't want to be here. But apparently, that didn't matter. because now she had powers. And that changed everything. The chase. Lena darted around a corner, skidding across the smooth floor. A security drone whizzed in front of her, its blue eye scanning for threats. She didn't think. She reacted. She raised her hand. The drone shattered into 1,000 pieces. Lena blinked. Oh, that wasn't normal. She hadn't even touched it. She had just thought about stopping it, and it had exploded like a cheap toy. She didn't have time to figure it out. A squad of heavily armed guards appeared at the end of the corridor. Their weapons hummed, energy rifles charging up. One of them shouted, "Lena Carter, surrender now." Lena sighed. Yeah, no. She reached out with whatever weird force had awakened inside her, and the entire hallway flipped. Gravity snapped. The guards screamed as they were launched into the ceiling. Their guns flew out of their hands, clattering uselessly. Lena landed smoothly, unaffected. She tilted her head. "Ha, that's new." Toby, her tiny floating robot assistant, zipped beside her, his eye blinking wildly. "Lena, you just manipulated localized gravity without any external tech." Lena kept running. "Cool. Let's talk about it when I'm not getting shot at." The betrayal. She made it to the docking bay. Rows of sleek starships sat ready for launch, their engines humming softly. The massive hangar doors were closed, but Lena could fix that. She sprinted toward the nearest fighter ship, just a little further, and she'd be free. Freeze! A dozen armed soldiers stepped out from the shadows, blocking her path. Their weapons pointed directly at her heart. And behind them stood Commander Voss. Lena groaned. "Oh, come on." Voss stepped forward, his glowing blue eyes locked onto her. "You can't run, Lena." She folded her arms. "Oh, I really, really can." Voss's expression didn't change. "If you leave, millions will die." Lena exhaled sharply. "You people keep saying that, but guess what? This is not my problem." The guards tensed, ready to fire. Lena could feel the energy humming in their weapons. She could hear their fingers tightening on the triggers. She could stop them, with just a thought. Her powers were still a mystery, but one thing was clear. She was stronger than all of them. Voss took another step. "Lena, I don't want to do this." Lena smirked. "Then don't." And she raised her hand. The air cracked. The soldiers collapsed, their weapons ripped from their hands by an invisible force. The entire docking bay shook, as if space itself was bending around Lena's will. Voss was the only one still standing. His mask hid his emotions, but his voice was steady. "You have no idea what you are." Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. "Yeah. Well, I know one thing." Voss tilted his head. "What's that?" She grinned. "I'm leaving." She turned toward the ship, and then the lights went out. The kidnapping. For a second, there was nothing but pure blackness. Then, pain. Lena's entire body seized up. A burning sensation tore through her nerves, like someone had lit a fire under her skin. She gasped, falling to her knees. A new voice echoed through the darkness. "You're not going anywhere, Carter." Lena recognized that voice, and for the first time in a long time, she felt real fear. The darkness lifted, revealing a towering figure in gleaming black armor, a figure she had only seen on war broadcasts, the leader of the Tyrant Empire, Supreme Warlord Kale. Voss cursed and reached for his weapon, but Kale lifted a single hand, and Voss was thrown backward, slamming into the wall. Lena tried to move, but Kale's invisible grip held her down. His armor pulsed with raw, crackling energy. His piercing silver eyes locked onto hers. "You have no idea how long I've been looking for you, little human." Lena gritted her teeth. "Wow. Fanboy much?" Kale chuckled, his voice like grinding metal. "Your power is wasted on jokes. But don't worry. I will teach you how to use it properly." Lena struggled, but it was useless. Kale was too strong, too fast. For the first time in her life, Lena Carter had lost. Her vision blurred. The last thing she heard was Cal's voice, whispering like a promise. "You belong to me now." Then, everything went black. The war begins and ends. Lena Carter woke up in chains. Her wrists burned from the cold metal shackles wrapped around them, humming with an eerie blue energy that sent sharp pulses through her veins. She blinked, trying to shake off the fog in her head. The air smelled like fire and steel. She was in a prison cell, but not just any prison. This was the flagship of the Tyrant Empire. The walls pulsed with black, organic metal, shifting like it was alive. Outside the thick glass of her cell, Lena could see a massive armada of warships, stretching as far as the eye could see. A sea of destruction, waiting for orders, waiting for war. And she was right in the middle of it. The Supreme Warlord's offer. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. The cell door slid open with a low hiss. Lena didn't look up. She already knew who it was. Supreme Warlord Cal, the leader of the Tyrant Empire. The man who had conquered over 100 worlds, the most feared being in the galaxy. He stepped inside, his long black cape flowing behind him, armor glowing with dark energy. His piercing silver eyes locked onto her, filled with something Lena didn't expect. Amusement. "You're awake," Cal said, his voice smooth like a blade being sharpened. Lena stretched her arms lazily, ignoring the pain. Yeah. Kidnapping 101. Blah blah. Are you gonna give me some join me and rule the galaxy speech, or can I take a nap? Cal smirked. You always joke when you're afraid. Interesting. Lena rolled her eyes. Buddy, I don't do fear. It's exhausting. Cal stepped closer. The air around him vibrated with power. I have studied you, Carter. Your power is unlike anything I've seen. Even you don't understand it yet. Lena's smirk faltered for just a second, because he wasn't wrong. Cal leaned in slightly. Let me make this simple. You don't belong with the Council. They are weak, broken, cowards. Lena tilted her head. And you're what? The fun-loving space dictator. Cal ignored her. You could rule. You could reshape the universe. If you stand by my side, I will show you how to wield your true power. No chains, no limits, no fear. Lena narrowed her eyes. You want me to fight for you? Cal grinned. No, I want you to fight with me. Silence stretched between them. Lena could feel it. The raw, electric energy in her blood, the way Cal's presence made it react. She knew he was right about one thing. She didn't understand what she was. And that terrified her. But that didn't mean she was going to join Team Evil Cape. She sighed dramatically. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass. Cal's smirk faded. You misunderstand. This is not a request. He raised his hand. And the world exploded. The war begins. A shockwave of raw energy blasted through the cell, knocking Lena against the wall. The ship lurched violently, sirens blaring across the halls. Cal frowned. What is this? Lena grinned, spitting out a bit of blood. That? Oh yeah, that's my ride. Through the reinforced glass of her cell, Lena saw a massive fleet bursting out of hyperspace, the Galactic Council's warships. They had come for her. Toby, her tiny robotic assistant, had sent the signal. The entire Tyrant fleet came alive. Cannons whirred, shields flickered, and hundreds of fighter ships launched into battle. Lena knew what was coming next. A full-scale war. Cal turned back to her. You could stop this. Just say the word, and I will end this fight before it begins. Lena snorted. Yeah, I'll pass on that too. Cal sighed. I was hoping you would say that. He lifted his hand, and the chains holding Lena shattered. The energy that had kept her locked in place was gone. She barely had time to react before Cal attacked. The duel. Lena dodged just in time, as Cal's fist slammed into the wall, cracking the metal like glass. She spun, throwing out her hand. Pure, crackling energy blasted out, slamming into Cal's chest. But he didn't even flinch. His silver eyes glowed brighter. Good, but not enough. Lena didn't have time to blink before he was on her, moving faster than anything she had ever seen. She raised a hand to block, too slow. Cal's palm hit her square in the chest, and suddenly she was flying through the air, smashing through the reinforced glass of her cell. The battlefield rushed up to meet her. Lena crashed onto the deck of the Tyrant warship, rolling as fighter ships zoomed overhead, lasers flashing in all directions. The entire fleet was in chaos. Toby's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Lena, you are out. Get to the EVAC point." Lena staggered to her feet, blood trickling from her forehead. Cal dropped down from above, landing like a predator ready to strike. "No more running, Carter." Lena wiped the blood from her lip. Wasn't planning on it. And this time, she attacked first. The end, or the beginning. The entire battle paused. All across the galaxy, fleets fought. Planets burned. But the real war, the war that would decide everything, was between one woman and one warlord. Cal was powerful, unstoppable, a force of destruction unlike any the universe had seen. But Lena Carter, she was something else. She didn't want war. She didn't want power. She didn't even care about being special. She just wanted to be left alone. And if she had to break the universe to get that, so be it. The final battle had begun. The deal that shocked the universe. The universe was watching. Across the stars, billions of beings held their breath. Every warship, every outpost, every hidden rebel bunker. All eyes were on one battle. Not the fleets, not the soldiers. Just two people. Lena Carter, Supreme Warlord Cal, the woman who never cared, the warlord who wanted her power. Their fight had already become legend, the battle that shook the stars. Lena launched forward, her body moving faster than her mind could process. Something deep inside her had awakened, and now the universe itself bent around her will. Cal met her charge head-on. Their fists collided, and the entire Tyrant flagship trembled as if reality itself was breaking apart. Shockwaves of energy rippled across the battlefield, sending fighter ships spiraling out of control. Warships groaned, their metal hulls bending under the sheer force of two titanic beings clashing. Lena wasn't thinking anymore. She was acting. Cal struck like a storm, his movements sharp, calculated, brutal. He was a conqueror, a warlord who had fought and won 1,000 battles. But Lena, she was something new. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting because she wanted this to be over. Cal lunged, his fist a blur. Lena ducked, pivoting on pure instinct. With a flick of her wrist, she tore reality open. A gravitational rift snapped into existence, swallowing Cal for a split second before spitting him out, slamming him into the deck below. He skidded across the metal, sparks flying. For the first time in his life, Cal looked surprised. Lena wiped blood from her mouth, breathing hard. Had enough. Space Lord. Cal's silver eyes gleamed. He smiled. Not even close. Then he vanished. Lena had exactly half a second to react before Cal reappeared behind her, his fist already moving. She twisted, barely dodging. But she wasn't fast enough. Cal's palm slammed against her chest. And everything went white. The vision. Lena was floating. She wasn't in space. She wasn't in a battlefield. She was in the void. A familiar voice whispered, "Choose." Lena looked around. The void stretched endlessly. No stars, no planets. Just two visions in front of her. The first one. She saw herself standing beside Cal, an unstoppable force. Civilizations bowed before them. The war was over, but only because they had won. The galaxy feared them. She saw the power in her hands, the weight of it, the terrifying ease of ruling through force. And then she turned to the second vision. The galaxy was at peace, but it wasn't because of war. There was no throne, no empire. In this future, she saw herself walking away. She saw a universe that fixed itself, not with violence, not with war, but because someone finally refused to play the game. The voice whispered again, "War or peace? Choose." Back in the battle, Lena gasped, reality slamming back into her like a tidal wave. Kale stood over her, his armor cracked, his breath heavy. He had seen the vision too. Their eyes met. Lena understood. She stood up, slowly. And then she laughed. Kale frowned. "What's so funny?" Lena grinned, shaking her head. "This whole thing." She looked around, the burning ships, the soldiers locked in an endless war, the chaos, the destruction. It was all pointless. She exhaled and let go. The energy inside her, the power everyone wanted her to use, she released it. And the entire battlefield froze. The war stopped. Weapons failed. Ships shut down. The energy cores of entire fleets dimmed, as if the universe itself had pressed pause. The Galactic Council's fleet, the Tyrant Empire's armada, all of it. Lena stood in the center of it all, her arms outstretched, controlling something bigger than power, bigger than war. She had changed the rules. She turned to Kale. "I'm done." Kale stared at her, rage flickering behind his silver eyes. "You can't just stop a war, Carter." Lena smirked. "I just did." He lunged, but nothing happened. His power, his strength, everything that made him the most feared warlord in the universe, it was gone. Lena's power had stripped it away. Not by force, not by violence, but by choosing not to play. The deal. Lena walked up to Kale, standing just inches from him. "Here's the deal," she said. "You leave. You take your fleets, your war, your empire, and you walk away. No more invasions, no more threats, no more of this power-hungry nonsense." Kale's fists clenched. "And if I refuse?" Lena grinned. "Then I do this again. And again. And again. Every time you try to fight, I'll stop it before it starts. I'll ruin every battle you try to begin. I'll break every weapon before it fires. I'll make sure no one in the universe ever follows you again." Cal's face darkened. He knew she could do it. The warlord who had never feared anyone was now standing before the only being he couldn't defeat. Lena leaned in. "Or you could just go live on some nice planet. Maybe get a dog. Ever tried baking?" The warlord's jaw clenched. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. The tyrant fleet vanished into hyperspace. The war was over. The universe reacts. The Galactic Council was in shock. She ended the war without fighting. She stopped the most powerful empire in history with a conversation. Who is she? Lena Carter. She didn't care. She left. No throne. No rewards. No more politics. She took a small ship, grabbed a fresh cup of coffee, and disappeared into the stars. The legend of Lena Carter. Years passed. Stories spread. Some called her a goddess, others a ghost, a myth that drifted through space, appearing only when the universe needed her. Some said she had ascended beyond time itself. Others believed she was just a lazy woman who got lucky. The truth. Lena Carter was finally free, and she wouldn't have it any other way. The last laugh. The universe had changed. For the first time in centuries, there was no war. No desperate struggles between the Galactic Council and the Tyrant Empire. No dying planets, no battle cries echoing through the stars. And it all came down to one woman who didn't care, or at least, that's what she wanted everyone to think. Lena Carter. She had ended the war without firing a single shot, without leading an army, without ever wanting to be a hero. And then, just as suddenly as she had arrived, She disappeared. No throne, no victory parade, no rewards. Just her ship, her coffee, and an entire galaxy that wouldn't stop whispering about her. The legend of the woman who didn't care. Lena Carter had become a ghost. Her name was spoken in hushed tones in every corner of the universe. Some believed she had ascended to some higher plane of existence. Others thought she was just a story, a bedtime tale, to keep war-hungry generals in check. And yet, every so often, there were rumors. A lone ship drifting near the abandoned battlefields. A woman spotted at the edge of a forgotten star system, sipping a drink while the world around her fell into chaos. A voice that whispered through dead communication channels, shutting down war before it could begin. But Lena? She wasn't thinking about any of that. She was on a beach, on a planet no one had heard of, drinking a cocktail with an umbrella in it. And she was absolutely loving it. Toby, her tiny floating AI assistant, beeped beside her. "Lena, I must admit, I did not expect you to actually relax after everything that happened." Lena took a slow sip of her drink, letting the cool ocean breeze ruffle her hair. "See, Toby, that's your problem. You keep expecting me to do things, when really, the secret to happiness is simple: low expectations." Toby's eye blinked. "You ended an intergalactic war using nothing but sarcasm and existential exhaustion. You cannot seriously believe you'll be left alone forever." Lena sighed. "Oh, I know. That's what makes this vacation so special." And just as she said that, her wrist communicator buzzed. She groaned. "See, I told you. Couldn't even get through one drink." She lazily tapped the screen. The hologram of a panicked Galactic Council officer appeared, his face pale. "Lena Carter, you need to come back immediately." Lena took another sip of her drink. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do," the officer nearly screamed. "The Tyrant Empire, Theyre back." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Thought I told them to go home." The officer looked ready to faint. "They went home. That's Theyre." Lena sighed, rubbing her temples. "All right. Start from the beginning. And make it quick. I have a limited attention span for galactic nonsense. The Tyrant Empire's revenge." Turns out, Supreme Warlord Cal had, indeed, gone home. And in doing so, he had completely destabilized his own empire. For centuries, the Tyrant Empire had ruled through sheer brute force. When Kale left the war, his generals had been furious. His admirals had started fighting each other. Entire planets under his control had revolted. The empire had collapsed in record time. And now, the warlords who had once been loyal to Kale were desperate to reclaim power. They had formed new factions, each one trying to seize control. And guess who they blamed for all of it? Lena Carter. "They believe you destroyed their empire," the officer explained. "They are calling you the false queen, the woman who took their leader and shattered their rule." Lena scoffed. "Wow, didn't even do anything, and I still get blamed. Classic. They want revenge," the officer said. "They've sent assassins after you." Lena tilted her head. "Wait, assassins, like plural." The officer gulped. 72 of them." Lena actually laughed. 72 assassins. Man, they are really bad at math. "This is serious," the officer insisted. "They won't stop until you're dead." Lena took a deep breath. Then she turned off the transmission. Toby beeped in alarm. "Lena, why did you do that? This is a direct threat against your life." Lena stretched lazily. Yeah. Look, if they really want to find me, they'll find me." Toby buzzed anxiously. "And when they do." Lena grinned. "Then we'll see who's really unstoppable." The first assassination attempt. She didn't have to wait long. That very night, as she lounged in her beachside villa, enjoying the sound of the waves, she heard a soft click behind her, the sound of a silenced weapon being aimed. Lena sighed. Okay, which one of you is it? Silence. Then, a deep, growling voice. I am Derek's, shadow of the tyrants. I have killed kings, warlords, and gods. Your death will be soon. Lena turned around and flicked her wrist. Derek's, shadow of the tyrants, immediately collapsed. Not dead, just completely unconscious. Toby hovered over his body. Did you just knock him out with a thought? Lena shrugged. I don't know, Toby. I think he just got sleepy. Boom. The door exploded inward, and 6 more assassins burst in, weapons raised. Lena barely glanced at them. With one thought, their weapons crumbled into dust. With another, the assassins floated into the air, helpless. Lena leaned back in her chair, sipping her drink. Guys, this is just embarrassing. The assassins struggled but couldn't move. Lena yawned. Tell your bosses something for me. Tell them I don't care. Tell them they're wasting their time. And most importantly, she snapped her fingers. The assassins vanished, teleported straight back to their warlords. Lena took another sip of her drink. Tell them to send better assassins next time. Toby buzzed in disbelief. You really don't take anything seriously, do you? Lena smirked. Toby, if I took things seriously, I'd go crazy. Now let's enjoy this vacation before the next batch of idiots shows up. Toby sighed. You do realize they will never stop hunting you. Lena stretched her arms behind her head. Oh, I'm counting on it. She grinned up at the stars. Because if they thought she was done, they had no idea who they were dealing with.